Okay, so I'm also a strong believer in note-taking skills. It is a lost art, unfortunately, as we've battled, as we've grown accustomed to technology, and we've gotten away from penmanship skills. But my students call me the Cornell Note Guy because I spend the whole year, day in and day out, developing a vital skill for in terms of academics, thinking, processing. And I'm not going to get into it here, but in terms of what I'm asking you to do is to come to the table for this presentation with your notebook so that you can think about solutions to the problems that we're going to talk about. And if there's ideas that come up, and if there's suggestions that I give and ideas that I give and notes, you're making a reference to that so you can come back to it. And that's really important because we teach our kids to do the same thing. With a presentation like this, I'm going to cover a lot of content and I want to give you a chance to do something with it. So have your notebook out and ask me questions as we go through. Just add it into the chat feature. So the other hat I wear as a business owner, I started a executive function coaching business a number of years ago and started to just jump into homes and solve complex problems. It's evolved. So I have a team of coaches now that have joined me, and that really only started because I refused to say no in helping out any child that needed it or wanted it. So from executive function coaching to academic coaching, and now it's really evolved also to parent coaching, helping parents to help their kids. And so it's a really dynamic process. We take a holistic team-based approach to interventions. So parents will call us and say, my child is not doing their homework. And we kind of joke and I say, well, we know this isn't a homework disability, so let's look big picture and see what the true opportunities are to build skills. And with that, we take a strength-based approach. So part of this training tonight is you're going to really learn what it means to take a strength-based approach to developing my child and harnessing those strengths. These are just some pictures, just an amazing team. We have parent coaches, speech language pathologists, special ed teachers, and transition expert people, transition specialists that help kids through those transitions in life. So really special team, and I'm really fortunate and blessed to be working with each one of them. And they're local, but they're also spread out. So the pandemic has really shifted our office-based work to be both office and virtual. So it's been really a blessing to be able to help more people, more kids that way. Just a little bit of the summary of what we'll try to get through tonight. I'm going to speak fast, but also try to deliberately pause to give us a chance to reflect and have a conversation. And so I will move fast through certain parts to make sure I'm giving you as much value as possible, but at the same time, I will try to pause to get feedback from you. Again, like I said, I'm a teacher, and I don't like to lecture as a teacher. I like to pose questions and create dialogue and reflection and analysis. So in doing that, I hope we can do that together. One of the most important questions I want you to answer first and foremost is who's on your mind. I'm using a little app. So if you have your phone, put your phone over that. Open up. This will be. I'm going to speak to the person in the room that may not know how to do this. Open up your pictures on your phone and put the picture over the barcode that you see in front of you. It will show a link. Click the link, and it will open up an app that I'm going to ask you to just have fun for a second and write in who's on your mind. You can write down your child's name or abbreviation, doesn't matter. And then I would like you to write down why they're on your mind. What is the reason that you're coming to this presentation? We're getting it? So I'm right now going to share out something. See if I can do this. Okay. Share this tab instead. Watch this. Give it a try. Oh, I love the name Piper. It's such an awesome name. Your comment about Piper reminds me of a girl, Eleanor, in my class, and she's struggled the whole year to get into class and navigate the social dynamics of the school year. And we did presentations in class the other day, and she wanted to go first. She was raising her hands to want to present first, and I thought, wow, what an amazing testament to her her conviction to overcome those anxieties. I was really impressed. So hopefully I can share some suggestions with Piper. This either has a delay on it, or we have a very inactive group. Which one do you think it is?
Can you go through the instructions again to do that? I'm sorry.
Sure. Just take your cell phone and put it over the barcode. Take a picture of that barcode. Well, don't take a picture. Just hang it over that barcode and then click the barcode.
I'm on my cell phone though.
Yeah. Oh, you're watching on your cell phone. Okay. Yeah. You're is there someone's cell phone next to you that you can steal? If you don't know where, you can put, if you don't have the technology features that I'm asking for, you can put it in the chat. That also works. Yes. That's a great point as well. Sometimes we add technology to life we think it's going to make things better, and it actually doesn't. Okay, awesome. Thanks for participating in that. That's kind of a test run there to see what kind of engagement rate we have from the group. And all right, so who's on your mind is really important. It's going to guide your thinking and your, I would say, the results of this presentation. So some of you actually already did present feedback back to me, and you did fill out the questionnaire that I had for you as you were signing up. So I appreciate that, because it's, oh, Jen has a question. Go ahead, Jen.
No, I hit it. I'm on my phone too. I'm sorry, David.
Okay, no worries. That was fun. Okay, so I went through so for those people that I'm presenting right here that filled out the questionnaire earlier, I really appreciate that. It gives me a chance to think deeply around this presentation and how it relates to your child and what you're looking to get out of it. So I appreciate that. So let's acknowledge something before we really jump into the details. I'm about to jump into problem-solving skills, which is at the heart of all of this. And let's just generalize an understanding and acknowledge that one of our major goals as parents is to raise independent, responsible young adults, right? And to do that, it's really important that we help them engage deliberately in the expectations in the world they play, right? So part of doing that is that's the hard part, right? That's the role. When we see problems in our children's life, some of our problems we see is related to that disconnect, the gap between their independence and codependence, right? The struggles that they're facing and their inability or the lagging skills to solve those struggles and to move through those, whether it's anxiety-related self-regulatory issues, or it's executive function issues, or it's academics, learning disabilities, things like that. Our job is we're constantly monitoring those gaps, those deficits, with the ultimate goal of we want our children out of our house and living independent lives, right? We don't want the boomerang effect and have them back in our basement where we're like, oh, this is what I was trying to avoid. So these presentations, I feel, are really powerful in doing that. To get us towards that outcome, I'd like you to take a minute and think of your child in their adult life, or at least at the age of 25. And I want you to think about what their life looks like, right? What is your vision? This is a very IEP driven question, right? It's what is your vision for your child? And in doing that, I also want you to reflect for a second on what you might be anxious about when it comes to your child's future. All right, so sometimes I ask you to think and reflect. You may have to come back to those questions, but you've initiated the process, which means you're more likely to finish it later on. Okay. Problem-solving skills is what I do all day long. It's problem-solving skills related to all levels of executive functioning. Right, from flexibility to problems to metacognition to working memory to time management, doesn't really matter. Everything is what's the problem and how do I come up with possible solutions to problems. So as a parent, we're always helping your kids solve problems. What I'm going to suggest is us to think about these problems in relation to how do I step back as a parent and empower my child and help them solve their own problems.
No, it's okay.
So here's a question that I just want you to put into the chat feature. Don't worry about Slido right now. Let's move past that. Someone needs to press mute on their phone. What's the best question to ask a child when they look stuck or off task? Write down an answer. What do you think? Awesome. Good responses. When we find our kids stuck, sometimes we can get into problem-solving mode. And one of the most important aspects of the work we need to do as parents when we have kids that are really struggling with these problem-solving skills is to initiate their own ability to solve the problem, right? So one way, so as you think about this is as your child is stuck, one of the most important, I'm following a little bit from Ross Green. I don't know if you guys know Ross Green. He's out of Massachusetts. He's a guru in the world of problem-solving skills. He calls them lagging skills. And he's the one that he wrote the book on the explosive child. So if there's anybody as old as I am in the room, and may have a child with those kind of big emotions, then you'll know Ross Green in The Explosive Child, one of the first books to come out on this topic. But anyways, he talks about buckets. And as a parent, it's really helpful for us to compartmentalize what problems are worth our attention, meaning we have to step in and solve them, and which problems are something that might be less significant. Right, so you can think of problems in 3 different categories: ones that are safety related, and ones that I can maybe put on the shelf. It's not really worth my time and attention right now, because if you take every problem, you're gonna get overwhelmed with all the problems. And then there's problems that I'm gonna say, okay, that's something I want to focus on. So as our children are struggling, if they look stuck, if they look like they're off task, one of the most powerful questions you can ask is an open-ended one. And Ross Green will say the best thing to do is to say something like, "What's up? You look stuck." So all you're doing in that moment is you're just labeling what you're seeing. So part of the journey with connecting with our children and helping them feel heard is trying to stay out of the emotionality of that of the unsolved problem, right? Because we as parents can get hyper sensitive to our children's problems. And that can lead to feelings of judgment and criticism and a break in the connection, right? So one of the most helpful things to do is to initiate a connection to that problem and just recognize that your child's struggling. So as a teacher, or as a teacher, I may see a child that's standing in the back of the room. And this actually just happened the other day. I was like, Jonathan, you look lost. So I know what the problem is. He's off task talking to a buddy in the back of the room, and I know that. So part of the initiation is can I access his problem solving skills? Johnny, you look lost. What's up? So in that moment, Johnny has to look back at me and think, and that's really the part that's exciting about this problem-solving moment, is if I can allow my child a chance to think with that moment, that connection, what can they think about? And I'll get into how the ways of promoting that thinking process. But if I can create that connection, unemotional, get down at their level, make eye contact if I need to, and say, you look stuck, what's up? What I'm doing is I'm helping my child to initiate within themselves a metacognitive process where they have to think about themselves, their identity, right? They have to think about the moment they're in. And I'm going to teach you some suggestions when you come up with a schedule for your child and you come up with routines. The journey around helping your child navigate those routines, navigate their identity within the morning from 7:30 in the morning to 8 or 6:30 in the morning to 7:30 when they have to get on the buses, is who am I trying to be in that transition in the morning? And as problems come up, how can I initiate a moment with my child to help them to help themselves? To help them to help themselves. If I can do that 1,000 times a year, I'm going to be moving my child towards greater independence. Now, I can tell my child, why are you in the basement? It is 7:35. You should be upstairs brushing your teeth. You should be in your room getting dressed. You should be downstairs having breakfast. I can say all of that. And sometimes I have to, because I have to get out the door to work myself. However, in the moments that I can steal, where I can initiate that moment of problem solving and that engagement, that connection, where my child for that moment feels my attention and doesn't feel judged, what it's going to do is going to keep them in their frontal lobe. And it's going to keep them from getting angry, right, to getting defensive, because they're not feeling judged by their parents, not feeling like they're disappointing them. So that's a journey. It takes practice. But I hope by talking about this, you can kind of maybe walk away with some examples around what this really looks like. What does it sound like as a parent when my child is having a temper tantrum for whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just a temper tantrum. How do I initiate in that moment a chance for my child to help themselves? And like I said, bucket A, B, and C. Sometimes it's a problem. It's just not worth tackling right now. Got to get out the door. Just going to move on. But in my mind, as a parent, I'm coming up with, but I can notice, I'll come up with that tomorrow. Oh, I'll address that at bedtime. I noticed you were a little stuck this morning. What was going on? That's pretty cool. That's a chance at the end of a day to process something that happened in the morning when you're maybe not in the emotionality of it. But again, what you're promoting is these metacognitive skills, this ability to think about my identity, to even reflect on the past, reflect on the past and plan for the future. So it's a really powerful process that as a parent, if you can grab a hold of moments in a day, in a week, then you're going to continue to move your child forward. Does that make sense? Sometimes I don't even get to these slides and these parent presentations. I leave the problem-solving stuff to the end, and I literally flipped it. I'm talking problem-solving skills first, intentionally. So I'm hoping that right away you're walking away with some suggestions, some ideas, some aha moments that might clarify a challenge that you have on your mind. Our children inherently want to do well. They just don't know how. It's another kind of Ross Greene quote. So in the moments when they're not doing well, if we can initiate a connection with them to give them an opportunity to think and process with us involved, well, that's a huge win. And that means that we can stay on their team a little longer. What is important to recognize in this journey of the terminology around executive functioning is it's getting a little too compartmentalized from my perspective. I'll work with teachers, and teachers will treat these different terms as if they exist in silos in your brain. They don't. Executive functioning are these constructs that have different people will use in different ways to describe executive functioning. What I want you to understand as a parent is executive functioning is self-regulation. You can't have executive functions, you can't access executive function skills without self-regulation skills. So self-regulation skills is the most important skill to develop. The ability to organize. I love this. This is an amazing slide. This is a GIF file that actually, I don't know why I'm not citing them, but it's out of the Harvard Center right there. The Harvard for the Developing Child at Harvard University. It's an amazing file because it just so cleanly lays out the cognitive process that goes on in a child's brain. When our child is in amygdala hijacked, which in your mind, which we can say is if they're out of their mind, so to speak, if they're emotionally charged, then you can think of that gate being shut, and there's no way your child is going to be able to process or problem solve anything. Okay, they're basically in a fight or flight pattern, and they're in their downstairs brain. If you think if you're in Dan Siegel's camp, and so in those moments, we just have to teach them strategies to regulate. That's okay. That's huge. That's so important. How to regulate. And in that journey of regulation, what we're helping them to do is to monitor, right? To be able to judge their own behaviors and to be able to react and in the thinking and emotions of things. By the way, I'm holding a mediator, and if there's any Sarah Ward fans in the room, a mediator is a tool used to build executive function skills through task analysis or task and planning. So a mediator can be used with your children too when you're trying to help them make decisions around the steps to completing it, getting ready in the morning. Right? Let's get your mediator and let's walk through the 3 steps you need to do in the next 10 minutes. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to come back downstairs, and I'm going to eat breakfast. So I'm holding my mediator because it's something for me to hold on to, but share that with you. So if you all want to try something with me, I'm going to prove this to you. I'm going to prove that self-regulation is more important or is the gateway to executive function skills. Okay, are you ready? I'm going to teach you the most powerful breathing technique there is. Done a lot of research in breathing. I don't know if you guys know Wim Hof, but I spent a time in Spain with Wim Hof, who is the guru of breathing. And I've come back with all sorts of practices on breathing techniques from yoga. However, as a teacher, this is the best breathing technique there is. So if you want to join me, close your eyes, put your hands on your lap, put down your fork if you're eating, and just listen to me. I'm going to take you through a breathing exercise. Ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Okay. If you practiced that, I think that was maybe 16 seconds. I may have done 28 seconds. However, doesn't really matter. If you just did 1 or 2 rounds of that, how you feeling? Give a quick response. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you feel better or worse is all that really matters. I will do this almost every day in my classroom. It takes, as you noticed, it takes only 66 seconds for the state of the whole class to shift from a place of anxiety and tension to a place of calm and ready to learn. The power of breathing and the awareness of our breath is so grounding that for any child that has chronic self-regulation challenges, like an ongoing state of anxiety around 6 to 8, this technique is so powerful that if you can get a child from a chronic 6 or 8 to a 4 or 5, you've just given them a chance at at having a successful day. I've talked, so I'm shifting a little bit, and we come back to some other examples of building self-regulation skills through growth mindset training. But before I do that, you've heard me talk about connection. I use the word connection a number of times when I was talking about problem-solving skills. You cannot help your child solve their problems if you do not foster a strong, positive relationship with them. That's okay. It's just acknowledging the truth. Some children, they move quickly away from their parents at a young age, and they want to figure everything out on their own, even at the expense of their own success, because they could just listen to mom or dad and everything would be fine. However, if you can foster that connection, what you'll be able to do is lend support. When a child is struggling, you can say, "What's up? You want to talk about it?" Right? You can be involved in helping them regulate, problem solve, and build these skills. So the connection is so important. How do you build it? It's such an individual family question, but you can think about it in 4 different categories. There's the emotional connection, the behavioral connection, there's the family aspect of things, and then there's the cognitive aspects of things. And when you think about that, you just think of opportunities that you can use to connect with your child while things are moving in the right direction, right? And if you can foster that relationship, and one of the most powerful ways to do that is by harnessing and fostering your child's strengths, right? If you can do that, you're going to continually build a strong relationship with your child, because, you know, as parents, as you know, we nag a lot and we complain a lot and we point fingers a lot and we judge a lot, and our children know by the end of the day what we suck at, right? But and they know what they suck at, and they know because they have conscientious parents reminding them where the expectations are and how they haven't met them yet. Okay, we know that. In the meantime, how many times a day can we help our children? How can we celebrate their strengths? Doesn't really matter what it is. How do we celebrate their strengths? Right? I had a parent that wanted their kid to go to summer school for math. This kid hated math. There was no good reason to go to math summer school other than to torture this child. He wasn't going to become an accountant. There was no issues with him graduating high school with his math credits. And so it took a hard conversation to say, what are you trying to prove? And what are you trying to accomplish? And the flip side is what is your child good at? And how do we take a summer to build those strengths and to harness those interests? And also, I love the mirroring traits. This is Ned Howell out of Sudbury. And so think about the stuff you nag about and then turn it into a positive. The stubbornness, the impulsivity, right? The intrusiveness, the hyperactivity. How are all of those traits positives? They are. You just have to change your perspective. And changing your perspective can be all it takes, right? The other side of this coin, when we think about fostering connections with our children and building these problem-solving skills and building self-regulation skills, if we can use the language of grit and the language of a growth mindset, we are fostering in our children a resilience, a fortitude, right? One of my students the other day, we were doing our presentations, like I was saying, and if you want to trigger someone's anxiety, tell them to give a presentation, right? So I knew that, and I knew this was going to be difficult for my students, and so here I am in the front of class talking to one of my students who I really thought wasn't going to be able to do the presentation. And she said, I'm anxious. And guess what I said to that? I said, wow, that's great. And she looked at me with the most curious expression on her face. Like, what are you talking about? Why is being anxious great? So I just spun the perspective on what it means to be anxious. And in that moment, here she was in class, ready to face the anxiety of presenting. I said, that's it. That's the essence of life. It's facing the anxiety, working through it. And as an outcome, you've built resilience, self-confidence. So how do we change that language with our children? Or how do we demonstrate that through our own language and our own actions? And in doing that, we foster something that's the most powerful construct to develop in our children. That's self-efficacy. That's the fundamental belief that I can solve my own problems. I can move through life deliberately and achieve my own desired expectations. Really powerful stuff. And the grit mindset is this testimony around that. I would say most children with ADHD, most children with learning disability, most children with dyslexia, most children that have to get up out of bed every day and walk into the lion's den of school are the most resilient children on the planet, right? And if their attendance is also high, they never give up. How easy would it be for a child that hates school to not want to show up and just put their head in the pillow, close the door and say, leave me alone? That alone deserves a celebration party, maybe quiet one, or maybe a daily pat on the back. Say, I'm proud of you, man. I know that's not easy going out there every day and getting reminded of everything you suck at. Good for you. But those are the examples, right? We can try that. So think of this from your child perspective. Take a minute, write down, what are your child's passions and interests? What are 3 weaknesses that can be seen as strengths? And what are some statements that you are already using that you just want to acknowledge and build on that can foster the grit, the growth mindset, the kind of the perseverance muscle? If you can do that, you're building the connections with your children. You're changing your perspective that will also change their perspective. So I'm going to, again, because you've initiated that exercise, you're going to go back and finish it, because that's what happens. It's called cognitive dissonance. Nobody wants to leave a task undone. All right, have you ever found yourself only emptying half the dishwasher Typically, when you start the dishwasher and emptying it, you end up finishing emptying the dishwasher. So lagging skills, developmental delays. For those in the audience that may find this helpful, this evidence can be helpful when we think about our own expectations with our children, right? And I give you an example of the classroom already. Many of my students have the presentation skills of a 7th grader. Because of the pandemic, they never had a chance to. Think of this in terms of ADHD, executive function challenges, and social cognitive developments. Many of our children that we are talking about here today also have developmental delays that put them far below their peers. Yet, school expectations remain the same. So it's important as a parent, if we have to advocate with the school, and if we have to make sure that there's clear understanding around where my child is developmentally, and how do I meet those developmental needs, we have to see this as parents. This is helpful. It's just meeting our children where they are helps foster that connection, helps foster an understanding that if my expectations are too high, then I'm setting my child up for failure. Right? So I want to have my expectations meet them where they are. Doesn't mean I will get to those high standards. It's just realizing that it's going to take more time. It's a delay, right? It's a developmental delay. It means they may need more time to get there. And if I don't appreciate that gap, then the struggle is going to be so great that they may form an identity with the deficit, and therefore never overcome it, because they'll just define themselves as having an inability to do whatever. And that's really the problem. Meeting where they are allows them to build, right? It's like you just don't throw a child into a pool and say, okay, start your first race when they've never learned how to swim. So you really meet them where they are, and you build those skills deliberately and conscientiously, right? I'm going to do a little deviation here on purpose, because to move through some of the other slides and recommendations, I got to kind of call out an important elephant in the living room, and that's what's going on with screen time and how that's promoting. And I love the slide. No, that's not my son. Some people have asked me that. I said, he's kind of cute. He probably could have been, I have big ears. That kid has big ears, but it's not. Point being is as a parent, one of the hardest things for us to do is to help our children regulate their attention when it comes to screen use. It's extremely important if our children have ADHD and they have a tendency to gravitate towards those high dopamine rich activities. And that can create a chronic issue if they progress down a road that they don't find balance in, right? And therefore they become fully consumed in gaming and whatever other addictive like patterns can come from screen use. So it's really important. I did a whole video on autobiographical planning because this is also very executive function based. But when our children, even as adults, when we sit on our phones, and the phone just become this gateway to nothingness. So there's no future identity in there. There's no past reflection in there. So when we look at our phones, it's just an escape, not a negative one, and it's not intentional. It's just the app industry doing a good job of grabbing our attention. But when we are looking at those devices, what we're not doing is we're not thinking about ourselves, right? And what we're not doing is we're not planning into the future what my day looks like. We're not sitting there in a state of low anxiety thinking about that quiz that's first period, and therefore taking out my review guide and studying it on the bus, right? We're not thinking about that kid, we're just not thinking about future problems and then reflecting on how to solve them. Everything gets stopped. And so I walk into my life meeting it like a brick wall. And you see this when you're driving to work in the morning. How many children stand by the bus stop with their phones attached to their face? It's not always a big deal, but it is worth acknowledging that we as parents are allowing that to happen by what we do with that technology and how we promote it. So a couple recommendations that I'm pretty hard-lined about this. You don't want to be my 12-year-old that is in 7th grade. But there is a initiative. It's called Wait Until 8th. Some of you, of course, have heard of it. But it's a really cool initiative. And if you can build a community around that initiative, then kids don't feel isolated. And therefore and parents don't feel isolated, and they can move through middle school without the extra added stress and anxiety that comes from social media and what that does, how damaging that is to middle school teenagers. And then have some hard lines around what it means to, where technology fits in your child's schedule. There is nothing more interesting than gaming. There's nothing more interesting than social media. So recognizing that, putting it in front of our child who might have dysregulation challenges, executive function challenges, and then asking them to independently control that. It's like giving, an alcoholic, a 3-night stay at a liquor store. Like, it's just unfair. So recognizing this is important as a family, and to say, what do we do? So, and not as a disciplinarian, but as a recognition that in this family, these are our values. So we have to role model that, right? Our phones go someplace, our TVs are off, right? We are also regulating our attention with social media to role play what that looks like. So these are great conversations to have with your teenagers and preteens, and start to really draw some expectations around what that looks like. I'm going to skip through the executive function. So let me pause for a second. What questions do we have? I'm going to bounce to something that might be really cool to go over. Working memory. Okay, we have 9 minutes. I want to give some time for Q&A. I still can, but what do you all know about working memory? It is extremely important. And I'll tell you, most of the challenges that we see with our children can be explained through this nonverbal and verbal relationship with working memory. So a couple of examples. So when we think about working memory and we think about the relationship between verbal and nonverbal, verbal is the language. It's the self-talk. Okay, so, and nonverbal is the images. So when I think about verbal, but they relate, right? So without the nonverbal, there is no verbal. So many of our children have lagging nonverbal skills. So their ability to picture their identity in images is lagging, right? It's not that strong. And because it's not that strong, it looks foggy. And because it looks foggy, it's hard to create an emotional anchor to that, and therefore come up with a language that matches the imagery, right? So a functioning brain, or the functioning working memory, can naturally move between these images of what my future looks like and what I'm trying to do and problems and stuff, and come up with the self-talk and the language that goes with it pretty naturally. So what we can do as parents is we can foster that. And this is pretty cool. So when you think about homework process, you can actually take your child through this journey. You can think about morning routines, evening routines, same thing. What does it look like to be an effective student at home? Well, this kid looks like a pretty effective student. What do I look like as an effective student? And can I start to think of myself modeling and practicing and seeing the images related to that effective student? And if I can, what does it sound like as a verbal process? Right? And this is obviously thought-based, right? This is the metacognition of processing. What's going on, thinking about thinking. But it can look as concrete as this. Right? So I have this identity around what my morning looks like. And this is a child that's a young student that is had some pretty strong, big emotions and some dysregulation. So the nonverbal cues were significantly beneficial to her. By the time she was able to anchor the nonverbal with the verbal and practice it, her confidence and her success went through the roof, mainly because she was able to break the codependency ties with mom and find success at the start of her day. It was powerful. And then we just did that for the evening routine. We didn't touch homework. That was like that was a monumental task. We just focused on simple parts of the day that we could find as instant wins. Okay. So the other part I'm going to jump to is, it's less on priority, future planning. Okay. So I'm just going to jump to this because we only have a few minutes, and I'm going to make sure you guys get everything I can at you that's good takeaways. If you're not using a planner with your child, I'm going to suggest you do. And then you're going to say, but Dr. Murphy, my kid refuses to use. Go ahead. Someone want to say that? I'm just kidding. I know that's going to be said. Actually, I keep looking down because I have my chat screen down here and the video up here. So in case you see me doing this, that's why. My chat screen's down here on my other computer. The planner, and I would say if you can do this, I would align the planner with what goes on at school. So if you can work with your school system on building that type of relationship, the planner could become a constant place for deliberate thinking and problem solving. So here's what ends up happening. We know this as parents. I don't know if you guys use Aspen or Google Classroom, but there's typically one platform where you see grades. And then there are other platforms. It'd be nice if it was the same. I'd love it if you guys said it was. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Andrea. So Google Classroom is great because if teachers are all using it, you have a place that they can see all their assignments. It comes with a to-do list. It's pretty cool. I can check off the assignments they do. I can submit them. It all looks really great. And many students, that's enough. They do not need anything more. There are others that we want to teach planning skills to because that is where they are lagging. And I will say I teach all my students, even freshmen in high school, all of them have to use a planner and all of them have to take notes. Even if they can take notes and even if they're good planners, they still have to practice the discipline of deliberately tracking their life in a calendar. And a planner is a calendar. It's just an agenda is a calendar that's for students. That's why they call it an agenda. And it has like the classes on the side. And so what it does, it gives them a deliberate physical behavioral relationship with what they're trying to accomplish, right? We know this. How do we transition our children into using it? Well, that takes a conversation. That takes some real deliberate conversation about expectations, right? Motivation, engagement, incentives, and privileges as it relates to managing their life using the tools. What ends up happening for many of us, you see the little ketchup guy? The ketchup guy represents the past. And when I make too many mistakes, I find myself trying to catch up on those mistakes. And those mistakes represent missed homework, right? So I'm playing catch up. And my joke is always, oh, so you like to put ketchup on more than just your fries. Well, my joke is, of course, it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. So teaching kids how to keep up, right? Because obviously, if you are playing catch up, the LMS platform like Google Classroom is not enough for you. You need something more deliberate that is yours, that represents your future plan, your identity, your life. And then the game gets harder from there because every student with executive function challenges in ADHD knows how to use a planner. The journey for them is the consistent use of it until they start to see the results. And the results are, I'm not catching up anymore. Look at me, it's working. I'm getting things done. And then I can move to a deeper analysis. And that's when I can get into higher order thinking around reflecting, right? And reviewing and being able to analyze the past. How did it go last week? What do you mean? Open your plan and look at last week. Everything's checked off. Wait a minute, did you take Wednesday off from school? No. Well, Wednesday's blank. What happened on Wednesday? Oh, I just forgot. You what? I forgot. You forgot to go to school? No, I just forgot to write down my work. So how do you know you got it done? I just did. So you know that back and forth happens all the time. So as we help our students keep up, they start to see this pattern. And I know this is not easy. I get it. It's not easy. I'm a coach at night and I work with kids all day long. I know it's not easy. It doesn't mean we give up on it, like note taking. I am relentless on note taking. And I have students that were like, I can't read my own handwriting. I said, okay, that's a problem. Do you want to get better at reading your own handwriting, or do you want to get worse at reading your own? Do you want to go to college? Well, I want to go to college and I want to get better at reading my own handwriting. Great. Then there you got two good reasons to take notes. And they typically will walk away from me in agreement, right? Knowing it's not easy. But if I can practice these skills, it takes time, deliberate attention over time to train. It's like you just don't enter your first polo match, right? A water polo match. You have to train and get better before you can actually enter your first polo match. So when you have a deficit in these types of planning skills, the executive function skills, it does take constant attention over time, and that's okay. We just don't give up on it, right? So what planning tools are used at your home? If there isn't any, the decision should be, this is hard, is to either work with work in your home, or ideally work with the school as well on having a system in place, especially for children on whether an IEP, if they have learning centers, academic supports. There's a system in place that can be used on both fronts, where there's monitoring and tracking of information. Really helpful. Now, there may be some hand over hand at first, and then there's some relinquishing of those prompting towards greater independence. But the ultimate goal in this journey is teaching consistency. If I can teach consistency in the skills that matter most, I'm going to move my child towards a place of greater independence, right? And greater success in how they navigate their life. And this is kind of a good example of navigating your life, right? What are the consistent morning routines, evening routines? Now, you may say, my child knows their morning routine. I don't know if they do. You do. You may know, and they may say, I don't know what I don't know what my morning is. My mom just tells me what to do, or my dad. So I would say always sit down with your kids and try to map it all out. Map out their whole day and have them do it, because they want to. They want to be independent. They don't want you to be telling them what to do and how to do it.